Hi, we are going to be doing a few more solving equation problems. 2.1 did some very basic situations. I'm going to do a couple more examples from 2.2, which are a little bit more involved. I actually am going to try to do 2 videos with 4 problems each so that you can see some of the more involved things. Some of the things to remember when you are solving equations. It is all about the little details, so make sure you're very careful from one step to the other. When I solve equations, the first thing I do is simplify each side of the equation. So I will kind of treat them as 2 little simplification problems. And simplify this side, and I'll simplify this side. When I say simplify, that means combine our like terms. So we're going to combine our x's, and I'm going to pay attention to those negative signs. So I have a 3x and a negative 4x, which gives me a negative 1x, and then another negative 7 gives me a negative 8x with this minus 8. We don't want to lose anything as well. And now I have this negative 2 and this minus 8. That gives me a negative 10. Feel free to use your calculators to help you a little bit if the adding and subtracting sometimes gets a little bit crazy. All right, the next thing I do is I try to get all of my x's on one side, or my variable on one side, and the constants or the numbers themselves on the other side. My x's in this problem is a variable, and it already is on one side. I do not have any x terms over here. So I need to move this negative 8 to the other side. And to do that, we use that opposite property. And if I can add 8 to both sides, because adding is the opposite of subtracting, we want to kind of undo what's going on here. And remembering what I do to one side, I must also do to the other side. So this gives me a negative 8x. These guys would be plus 0, so I do not need to write that. And a negative 10 plus 8 is negative 2. And now we have to undo this operation here, and we have a negative 8 times x, so we need to divide to peel away that negative 8. And again, what I do to one side, I do to the other. So we are dividing by a negative 8. Here, that negative 8 and negative 8 gives me a 1, so I simply have 1x. And here I'm going to simplify this, a negative 2 over negative 8. The negative over negative is a positive. 2 over 8 is 1/4. All right, I'm going to do another problem. Again, we're going to simplify each side separately. This side is kind of already simplified as a negative 34. Here I have 4 times 5b. Notice this is multiplication, so this is not a distribution problem. Remembering when you distribute, you're taking a multiplication and you're distributing it over an addition or a subtraction. So here, this is just grouping that 5 and that b together. So there's nothing different than writing this as 4 times 5 times b, or 20b. Here I have the subtraction with the multiplication, so I do want to distribute that 2 to both parts. So 2 times my 6b is 12b, very similar to this. Notice it's 4 times the 5b, 2 times the 6b gives me 12b, and then a positive 2 and a negative 1 gives me a negative 2. Now I'm going to combine my like terms. So here I have 20b plus 12b is 32b. Okay, we want to get our variables on one side, which it is. Our variable is on this side alone. So we're going to move this, subtract 2 or minus 2 by undoing it using the opposite operation. So here we'll have a 32b. This is plus 0. And a negative 34 plus 2 is a negative 32, which we're now going to divide by 32 to undo the multiplication. So B is a negative divided by a positive is a negative. 32 divided by 32 is a negative 1. I have a few more that I want to work through in this video. Here's our next one. I see distribution here that I need to do because we have multiplication with addition. So we're going to distribute that 2. A 2 times a negative 3 is negative 6a. 2 times 2 is 4. This guy's just all by itself, plus a. Combining my like terms, I have a negative 6a and a positive a, remembering there's kind of like a 1 in front of it. So negative 6 and 1 gives me a negative 5. Get my variables on one side, which they are. I need to undo this plus 4, so the opposite of positive 4 or adding 4 is subtracting 4. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. And 2 minus 4 is a negative 2. And now we're going to divide by that negative 5. A is equal to a positive 2/5. Simply because we don't want to have too many negatives floating around. A negative over negative is a positive. All right, one final one for this video. Excuse me. I'm going to do some distribution, again, on both sides. So I have distribution here, and I have distribution here. Another thing to watch is where that equal sign is. We don't want to lose it or move it. So we have distributing here, 4 times my 1a is 4a. 4 times a negative 3 is negative 12. There's my equal sign. A negative 2 times a is negative 2a. Negative 2 times a negative 6 is a positive 12. Combining like terms, again, we treat these as two separate problems. I cannot combine an a with something that doesn't have an a, so this is already combined. Here we're going to take that negative 2a and that 6a, and we would come up with 4a, and we'd have plus 12. I want to get my variable on one side. So notice I have addition going on or subtraction going on, but I have a positive 4a on this side. So to undo it or to make it kind of disappear, we're going to subtract 4a from both sides, because a 4a subtracting 4a or a 4a plus a negative 4a is 0a. Same here. So I'm down to a negative 12 is equal to 12. And at this point, you can say that these two things is never true. This is never true. This is never true. So what that means, when I get down to that there's no variables left, I want to remind you, having a variable equal to 0 is an okay thing. But saying that negative 12 is equal to a positive 12, that's never true. So when that happens, we have that there is no solution. There is no value for x, or a in this case, that I could substitute in there that would make this thing true. This is going to be a false statement always. So there is no solution. If you come down and keep working and you come down to a point where, say, it wasn't negative 12 equal to 12, but you get something like 12 is equal to 12. Okay, so let's suppose that had been what we had gotten. So supposing this had been a positive instead of a negative, we would notice that this is always true. So if you come down to your variables being gone and you have a always true statement, 12 equals 12, 0 equals 0, 5 equals 5, negative 3 equals negative 3, that is always true. that would mean that no matter what value you substituted in there, you could put any value you wanted in for A, and it would work. So this means that all real numbers would work. So our solutions, we have more than one. We have all real numbers is our solution. Every number would work. Hopefully these examples help a little bit in your solving equations. The next video that I want to do for this section will be those that when you clear your fractions. So we'll see you in the next video.